Testing 1957. Dear Diary, today is my mother's 35th birthday. That seems so old. She said, that's because I'm 7. When I asked her what she wanted, she said she'd like me to say a prayer for her, and that would be a beautiful gift. I guess she thought I didn't save any money for her present, but I did. The twins are still too little, but I'm not. I gave her favorite perfume. The bottle said, Eau de Toilette. Daddy said it's the same thing. I'll bet she's glad I gave her a real present instead of just saying a prayer. June 18th, 1964. Dear Diary, Katie, my new best friend, was sick today, so I spent it with my mother. I was so surprised when we had a good time. We laughed so hard in the car and at the movies and even in the kitchen. Now that I think about it, we laugh a lot lately. Sometimes so hard that we cry. We never cry together, though. I usually cry alone in my room. Maybe someday I'll be able to handle sadness without crying like my mother does. August 26th, 1965. Dear Diary, my mother is off base on so many things. Now that I'm growing up, I realize she's not as smart as I thought she was. I know a lot more about some things than she does, and I say so. I sometimes have the feeling she thinks I'm off base, too. It must be my imagination, though, because she has never mentioned it. October 14th, 1966. Dear Diary, I was so embarrassed tonight that I could have crawled into a hole. Don finally asked me out, and when he came over, Mother wanted to know everything. Where we were going, when we'd be coming home, who we'd be with. She is so out of it when it comes to guys. I try to tell her how times have changed, that it's okay for a guy to honk the horn, that popularity is no longer based on personality, that you have to belong to the crowd or be doomed to a life of solitude. Sometimes I think she's living in the dark ages. February 15th, 1967. Dear Diary, so many of my friends have been boring lately. They just want to talk about themselves. My mother's been great about doing things together. I guess the twins don't demand that much of her attention anyway. It must be a treat for her to hear about what I did at school, what I am doing next weekend, my hairstyle that bombed, the colleges I'm applying to, what's wrong with boys. I listen to her too when I have time, but she really doesn't have much interesting to talk about. Journal entry for December the 5th, 1968. While our Frosh English professor may have thought keeping a journal would improve our writing skills, I find it takes up time I could use elsewhere. I'm involved in so many areas: self-awareness, interpersonal relationships, quantitative analysis, and I have to recount all I'm doing in my letter home, so it's a double effort. Mom's great about writing, but then she's not involved like I am. She just has things like church, the PTA, political meetings, the twins. Journal entry for April the 6th, 1970. After being home for spring break, I believe my mother and I are changing roles. I found myself advising her on things like how to stretch a dollar, how to introduce equality in her relationship with my father, how to raise my sister and brother. Unfortunately, my problems are beyond her understanding. She talked to me about them, but she never told me what to do. Journal entry for May the 1st, 1971. Lately, I've been thinking about Mom's lack of a career. Now that I'll be graduating and have started job hunting, I realize how little she knows of the real world. I worry about her ever having to venture out into it. She must realize it too, because she tells me how much I know and how confident she is that I will succeed in whatever I undertake that is important to me. Journal entry for July the 10th, 1974. I was so upset at work today. Trudy got the promotion I was sure I would get. When I called Mom, she just listened while I told her how discouraged I was and how many disappointments life holds. She said there would be a next time with a better position. If not here, then at another company. By the time the conversation ended, I felt a lot better. I guess much of it is a matter of attitude. I hope I've inherited her attitude. Journal entry for August 15th, 1976. Tom came home with me to visit my parents this weekend. They seem to like him as much as I do. Well, almost. Tom spent a lot of time talking to Dad. They're both secret carpenters. That gave Mom and me a chance to talk too. This time things were different somehow. Not the conversation, but the relationship. It's difficult to put into words, actually. It somehow seemed more, equal. We started on the same level, not about anything special, just about anything at all, from our hopes to getting stains out of furniture, to the last books we read. I never knew she and Dad had serious problems in their marriage when I was a teenager. I guess I didn't and don't know a lot of things. Journal entry for March the 6th, 1978. I'm going to have a baby. I keep repeating it slowly and softly. I can't believe it. Tom and I are so happy. When I called Mom and Dad to tell them, they were ecstatic. God, I'm scared. I want to teach him everything good, and I want him to have the best of everything, and I want to protect him, and I want him always to be happy. When I talked to Mom, she said, wanting all those things was the first step in being a mother. And the second step is realizing that fulfilling all those wishes is not possible. Then you can go ahead with being the best mother you can be. Thank goodness she's there for support. She says the same thing about me. If I can just be half the mother to our baby that my mother was to me. February the 9th, 1985. Dear Mother and Dad, once again this note will be brief. Tom's working late tonight. He's up for a promotion and he's putting finishing touches on a project. He's doing well and I do love him when I have the time to think about it. Jimmy's his father's son. I've got my left eye on him with his toy hammer and nails. He said that 4 is too old for a plastic boat, so he's building his own boat for the bathtub. Last week he fixed his chair. The blood didn't bother me as much as the stitches in his toe. I wish someone would tell Alessandra that she's 7, not 17. She's upstairs trying on my clothes and making makeup. She wears them more often than I do. Yesterday she helped by feeding the baby. I was 3 spoonsful too late, but Michael seemed none the worse for wear. Who would have thought an 8-month-old would eat chili? Speaking of Michael, I'd better sign off. He'll be waking soon and I want to finish an article I'm writing. It's taken only 3 months to do. Remember when I had the time for a daily journal. Take care, both of you. I'll write a long letter as soon as I can. Love, me, Tom, and the children. P.S. I almost forgot why I wrote. You wanted to know, Mom, what I wanted for my birthday. Is it possible I'll be 35 next week? Just say a prayer, Mother. Say a prayer. That would be a beautiful gift. Mother's Day, Sunday, May the 11th. An ancient story. The gods once summoned to Olympus the mortals. telling them to bring with them their highest achievements. The one who brought the greatest achievement was to receive a crown. The artist brought his paintings, the sculptor his statues, the husbandman the fruits of his fields, the poet his poems, the inventor his machines. But among them came also an old woman with nothing in her hands. The gods asked her, "Why are you here with nothing?" The woman answered, "I am here just to see who receives the crown. These are all my children." Then the judges said, "Give her the crown, for she has trained and inspired them all." Alvin N. Rogness. Hart the Monk. When my daughter Peggy was 3, I decided it was time for her to learn about some of the saints. We sat down with an old book of lives of the saints for children. It was a bit over her head, so I paraphrased. "St. Francis was a monk," I began. "What's a monk?" Peggy piped up. "Well, a monk is something like a priest," I said, and I launched into a detailed description of Montanism geared to her age level. Monks pray together, work together, and eat together. They live at a monastery, which may be like a small village, and each monk has his own job to do there. They don't marry or have children. They get up very early in the morning to go to prayers or mass. She listened quietly, nodding. "Do you have any other questions about monks?" I asked. "Yes," said Peggy. "What kind of noise do they make?" On a beautiful autumn day, a perky grandmother of 12 sits on a park bench outside the Elks Rehabilitation Hospital in Boise, Idaho. She chats, all the while playing with a 3-month-old infant nestled in a stroller, with bifocals and light brown hair glinting with gray. Evelyn Masura appears to be a typical grandmother, but she is in fact a most uncommon one. The infant is not her visiting grandchild. He is one of 3 foster children now living in the Masura home. During their 40 years of marriage, Evelyn and Tony Masura have borne 8 children, adopted 2, and cared for 50 foster youngsters, most of whom have been mentally or physically handicapped. For nearly a generation now, the Masuras have combined their compassion for handicapped children with much love and laughter. They continue caring for them at an age when most of their contemporaries are planning retirement. Although Evelyn feels some concern about her limited time to help Tony with the social aspects of his work, he is a partner in in an accounting firm. She says quietly, "This is our life. This is what we choose to do with our lives." Tony agrees. We get a kick out of it. It's amazing what can be done with these children. It was good for our kids too. The Masuras were sensitized to the problems of handicapped children after their daughter Mary, now 31 and living at home, became mentally impaired after 2 attacks of encephalitis as an infant. If she'd never had encephalitis, I don't know if we would have gone into this. But it's funny, the plan God has for people. Evelyn says, for us, it's a labor of love. It's our mission in life. There are a lot of things we have given up, but we've given them up gladly because we feel a child's life is so important. Instead of putting our money in a savings account or going out drinking or partying, says Tony, we put our money in the children. Then he laughs and tells how good Evelyn always was at mechanical things. That girl has saved me more money by making clothes and repairing things around the house. Right now she's busy making things for the grandchildren. I have only one regret in my life. I didn't marry her sooner. He pauses and says good-naturedly, but that does bring mixed reactions. We'd probably have more children. The Masuras have taken all ages into their home, but Evelyn and Tony agree that now they will limit their care to young children. Our expertise is with little children like Leroy and Amber, says Evelyn, of 2 of the foster children now in their care. Leroy Levin has been with them since he was 9 months old. He looks much younger because of his hydrocephalic condition. Leroy can't talk, can't walk, is in diapers, and cannot feed himself. But he sure can love you, Evelyn emphasizes. I don't know if he'll ever be able to implement what we're trying to instill in him. But there are certain times when little things come through. Evelyn takes him and Amber, too, to the Elks Rehabilitation Hospital in Boys once a week. The Masuras have seen Amber greatly improve since she came to them a year ago. Amber couldn't hold her head up when we got her, Evelyn explained. Amber had a traumatic birth and later was thrown onto a cement floor by the family dog when her birth mother left the infant alone for a short time. Another of the Masura children, Ray, came to them 17 years ago as a 3.5-year-old foster child. When he was 16, they adopted him. You have to belong to somebody, Evelyn says earnestly. You can't go through life unless you belong to somebody who loves you. Although a learning disabled child, Ray participated in sports and earned a high school letter for managing the football and wrestling teams. His older brother played football at Idaho State, and he looked up to that brother so much that he tried in high school. Of course, he didn't play too much or too well, but he did his best. Ray lived on his own for a time, but now lives at home. He's 21 now and having quite a time with his life, trying to get it together. But he'll make it, Evelyn says. Evelyn's compassion extends to most of the foster children's parents in spite of their mistakes. But she does have to struggle to forgive those who have been extremely abusive, like Ray's alcoholic parents. In addition to major burns on the upper part of his body, X-rays showed that he had been stomped, kicked, and thrown. It takes an awful lot for me not to be bitter towards his parents, Evelyn says sadly. We've had our joys and our sadness, she says, as she fans the pages of a little black book that contains important information about their many children. A 2.5-year-old hydrocephalic child, quite retarded, had over 15 operations. When pneumonia set in after one of the operations, the doctor was going to let her slip away. But Evelyn says, I stood my ground and insisted that he continue medical treatment. One day, while standing at the child's crib, she experienced an overwhelming sense of peace. I knew from that moment on that Mandy was going to live, that she was going to be fine, and she was. We never in this world thought there would be a mother and father who'd want this little girl. But there was an Air Force couple in Minot, North Dakota, adopted her, and today she is a young woman living with them in Washington State. Evelyn and Tony hear indirectly about their former charges. Regulations set by the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, with whom they work, discourage contact after the youngsters have been adopted. Sometimes, however, the grown children contact them. Tony said that a young Mexican girl they had 10 years ago still keeps in touch. As the older children left home, Evelyn took over the care of horses they had raised through the 4-H club. She now has 7 horses that she trains and enters in shows. Evelyn laughs and says, Tony never knows when he goes out of town whether he's going to come home to a new horse or a new child. When he's traveling, she calls and say, "Hey, Grandpa," and he'll answer, "Oh, no," but Tony still maintains it's been an interesting life. A young surgeon got a call from a colleague who invited him over for a poker foursome. "Going out, dear?" asked the wife sympathetically. "I'm afraid so," was the brave reply. "It's a serious case. There are 3 doctors there already." A doctor examining a patient noticed that the man's shins were badly bruised. "Do you play hockey or soccer?" he asked. "Neither," said the man. "All I play is bridge." Oh, you who take care of the sparrow without requiring of it to be like you. You who tenderly take care of the sparrow by putting yourself in its place with fatherly solicitude. You also take good care of us. And even if you require of us an effort in your image that you cannot require of the sparrow, it is without cruelty that you require it of us. No, but like a solicitous father, you put yourself in our place, and it is you who give us the strength to strive. Bluffing. A young surgeon got a call from a colleague who invited him over for a poker foursome. "Going out, dear?" asked the wife sympathetically. "I'm afraid so," was the brave reply. "It's a serious case. There are 3 doctors there already." A doctor examining a patient noticed that the man's shins were badly bruised. "Do you play hockey or soccer?" he asked. "Neither," said the man. "All I play is bridge." Signs of the times. At a garden shop, plant our seeds and jump back. On a cabinet maker's truck, counterfeiters. Outside a California reality company, we have lots to be thankful for. On a stack of tires at a service station, experienced tires, $10 each. On the back of a Buena Park, California police car, "Smile, I could be behind you." How to tell the children. "Where's Ginger?" our daughter Sherry asked as she hurried down to breakfast. "Did he come back?" She'd been worried the night before when our 18-pound orange cat hadn't come home. And as she climbed the stairs to her room, she asked her mother and me to try calling him again before we went to sleep. "Promise," she pleaded, "you won't forget." No, we hadn't forgotten. I'd even gone out into the backyard near the woods, but calling didn't help, and she still wasn't back that morning when Sherry left for kindergarten. Later in the morning, a neighbor called to ask if our big orange cat was at home. He hoped so, he said, because he'd just seen a dead cat that looked a lot like ours by the side of the road. Now we knew for sure what we'd suspected and denied all along. Ginger was dead, but how would we tell the children? Almost before we could think about it, Sherry was home. Did he come back? She called out as she ran into the kitchen. Where is he? Almost instinctively I answered, no, he's not here. And then after a brief pause I added, I guess maybe he ran away. Ginger did not come back, of course. After a few days the children stopped calling for him, and gradually the tearful comments about that stupid cat faded from our dinner table conversations. I realized that I had done the right thing, telling them that he had run away. He had, after all, run away through the woods to the road where he was hit. And wasn't it better to spare my children the painful reality of his violent death? But I had lied. It was nearly 20 years later that Sherry brought up the subject of Ginger again. She remembered nostalgically how that cat had put up with a lot of abuse from her and the other kids, how he would let them use him for a pillow while they watched TV, and how much she had missed him when he ran away. Then she asked me, why didn't you just tell us he was run over? That's what really happened, wasn't it? When I nodded my head, she added, we guessed it anyway. So we talked about how hard it is for parents to admit that death causes them pain too, and about how important it is that children be helped to face up to death. Having learned to deal with the death of a pet, for instance, our children might have coped more easily with the death of a teacher, a classmate, and a grandparent. With the wisdom of hindsight, I wondered how I would handle Ginger's death differently if I had to do it again. I decided that I'd be guided by 5 rules. First, be honest. That means not only avoiding the lie that the pet has been merely run away, it also means using language that is honest. Whether it was Ginger or Uncle Richard, the truth is that he died rather than passed away. The truth often doesn't hurt, but falsehood will probably hurt more. Number 2, deal openly with feelings. Children need to know that feelings of loss, anger, and guilt are normal responses to death. They need to experience those feelings themselves and to know that in the face of death, adults feel pain too. Can this class be saved? Betsy and Ann were best of friends and much distressed when they were put in different classes in preparation for their first communion. After class one day, Betsy announced proudly, we're up to original sin. Oh, that's nothing, scoffed Anne. We're past redemption. Finish on how to tell children. Number 3, listen more than you talk. Invite your child to talk freely about the pet or the person who has died. They may remember aloud the way Ginger raced through the house after he'd played with his catnip mouse, for instance, or the way Grandpa made us all laugh with his animal stories. Death is seldom a good time for explanations, though you're there to help the grieving process along, not to provide a theological education. Number 4, don't expect the process to be over in a few minutes. It won't be. Young children especially will often cry for a few moments and then run off to play, as if their grief had come and gone. But it will come back, and an alert parent will notice this and be there to listen. Number 5. And finally, just be there for comfort and security. In the face of death, a child will often lose trust in the world. A parent demonstrates that life goes on and not everything is lost. You can't put Humpty Dumpty together again, it's true. But you can manage to scramble the eggs, play catch, zip up the jacket, and read stories together. It will never be easy to tell the children when someone or something they have loved has died, but I'll know how not to start. I won't begin with, "He ran away." Last year, my 12-year-old son Peter landed a job as a local newspaper boy. He soon began thinking of ways to spend his earnings. Every day he looked at the newspaper ads for bicycles, motorcycles, and mini bikes. One day I left a copy of a Catholic magazine on the table. Next thing I knew, he was leafing through it. A half hour later, he called, "Mom, I know what I want to use my newspaper money for. There's an ad in this magazine that says it takes only $10 a month to sponsor a kid that's hungry." I told him how pleased God must be with him and how proud I was of his decision. He said, "Well, Mom, it looks like a good investment. It wasn't hard to decide at all." Genova Hera. 2 days before James Sherlock died, he wrote a letter to his wife, Margaret. Here are the final paragraphs of that letter. "Dear darling, this ALS has turned out our life upside down. I get a little scared at the final outcome, but I know God is with me. What I am concerned about is you. I miss you when you go, but I think that you should find a way to go somewhere and get a change and some rest. The time is getting close when I will need more help. These things we can work out day by day. We have had a good life together, and we can count our blessings in our children and in the help of others. And we know that God will not give a burden heavier than we can take. I love you above all things, and you have been a perfect wife. Jim. My friend Stella, driving home from work each day, often noticed an old rocking chair sitting on the front porch of one of the homes that she passed. Sometimes an old man sat there rocking. She thought that it seemed too odd that such a fine old rocker, perhaps an antique, should be exposed to the elements, and she wondered if he would be willing to sell it. She had great plans for refinishing it. One day she stopped and asked him if she could buy it. They agreed upon a price, and he sold it to her. She took it home and assumed the man would replace it immediately with another chair. Days went by, and no chair appeared. No old man sat rocking. Finally, she couldn't stand it any longer. Stella loaded the chair into her car and took it back. She slipped quietly up his steps and sat it once again on his front porch. Then she drove away. Soon afterwards, the old fella sat rocking away. Stella says, "Once I owned an antique rocking chair, but it never really belonged to me." Betty Beam.